Alright, the Drazhoath gameplay showcase. Though I heard some people call him Drazhoath. I hope that's not canon. I hope that's not the way you're supposed to pronounce it, because I don't think I could get coming at things from, just woke up a little bit ago. I got bags under my eyes. Tell, because my sleep schedule's been entirely off lately. Off more often than it's on. Got a bad hair day. I am wearing my Warhammer Skaven t-shirt today, but I doubt you can see that with the mic being where it is and the webcam being so elevated. Either which way, they did release a blog yesterday on Drazhoath, but it didn't reveal anything of substance. It was just like some concept art for the Kadai Fireborn and the Infernal Castellans. So 20 minutes here, though, I'm going to assume there's a little bit more beefy information. I did see one particular screen cap that looked like, yeah, quite a bit of info. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And if there's nothing in this video, then I will just not upload this. This is like full-blown trailer stuff. Toxiodal now just created the idea that all skinks with blowpipes are badasses.
Sorry to start with not much context in the middle of a battle, but these lizards have been on the horizon for ages, so it's about time I gave them what they deserve.
They've given Drazhoath a proper weapon, since he now needs to actually be put on foot, whereas on the tabletop game, he was always pretty well on the back of his great Taurus, so he didn't have any weapons, he was just carrying that big bowl of fire. So, interesting to see they gave that whole thing of like he's got a miniature cup of fire on a stick that he jabs his axe into to empower it, I guess? Odd.
And who better to deal out the punishment than the leader of the Legion of Asgore himself, Drazhoath the Ashen. Now is the...
It just sucks that he's not going to have his big bowl of fire. That was such an iconic part of him on the tabletop, but I understand why they're doing it. They don't need... It's a waste of dev time to have somebody, or a waste of dev time and budget, to have somebody make a bowl prop that's only going to be used for one version of Drazhoath. Especially considering it was a pretty animated-looking prop on the tabletop. So I get why. It's just... We on 4K here. It may have not rendered up to 4K yet. They have simply probably just uploaded it. Oops. Nobody look at my bookmarks. Definitely nothing.
Perfect time to show those who'd scorn him what his dark brilliance is capable of. We'll hit them with what I've been calling the Drazhoath 101. Artillery, firing lines, sorcery, skullcracker, and of course, the great beast Cinder Breath. Okay, now that they've been dealt with, let me tell you what Drazhoath and his angry legion have been up to. So, due to the Ashen himself being exiled to the Black Fortress so long ago, our starting position isn't exactly an easy one, as
that mountain looks thick.
The Black Fortress is stationed right in the corner. We're at turn 25 right now, and we've made some strides. We've got some luck starting with a 4-slot province. Noblar country has been transformed into a strong, efficient output for raw materials and armaments, and we've got the Great Drill built and ready. Those freaky vampires over in the Caravan of Blue Roses over in the corner have been ousted from the Haunted Forest.
Are they on the Immortal Empires map or they're on the Chaos map? The Noblar Black Fortress is not part of Noblar country on the Immortal Empires map, I believe.
Giving us room for yet another tower on the horizon. Karak Krakaton on the Ivory Road has also been taken from some enterprising Skaven. We've got a guy holding it for the meantime, and we'll either push further in for more materials and labour from some big ogre boys, or make some peace with the lads for a nice, profitable relationship. We've also been doing a few sacking runs to gain labour near Imric, and I think he's getting to the end of his tether with us.
Know this! I will not remember you once I have slain you.
And lastly, we've had the lizards, idling away on their little island in the far corner. They finally decided to pop their little heads up in our part of the world, saw our beautiful chaotic selves, decided that we didn't fit the great plan, and they were having—
This must be Immortal Empires. The Dragon Isles, I don't believe, are on the Realm of Chaos map. Unless they're adding it, but it'd be odd for them to add it, especially considering it seems to look like
none of it. And, well,
Hang on.
we saw how didn't fit in our part of the world. Saw our
No, those don't look like the Immortal Empires version of the Dragon Isles. Okay, I guess the Dragon Isles are on the Realm of Chaos map. I just have such a poor memory of it.
beautiful chaotic selves, decided that we didn't fit the great—
Right. I remember as when I played Zhao Ming in Realm of Chaos, I actually went out of my way to try and ally with the Dragon Isles. I wanted. Okay, wow, my memory of the Realm of Chaos map is
great plan, and they were having none of it. And, well, we saw how that went for them. Being in—
Hang on. Let's go back and look at that.
well,
He's got goblins stuck in cages attached to his bull. That's sad. Those are snotlings. Wow, that's even sadder. Snotlings are so innocent.
being in our little corner doesn't mean we haven't gone out to see the world.
Okay, that is a Infernal Castellan or an Overseer. That is a Bull Centaur Torda. I did figure that out in the week I've had since the trailer, is that the armored Bull Centaurs were supposed to... I can figure out that basic stuff.
World, though. We deployed a convoy to go fetch us some labor. It did cost us a pretty penny in armaments, but with the incoming labor we can hit the ground running with our thriving, happy workforce.
Okay, so the trade caravan does not make you money, it gets you laborers. Interesting. So, it's striking a balance between... Oh no, wait, it looks like it... Hang on, okay, it differs from every location. Okay, I'm seeing now, okay. So, each of them is a different input and output. Okay, so... Yeah, Silver Towers of Sorcerers. Let me actually really quick just check to make sure the recording is actually working. Yes, it is. Look. Banking. Okay. Silver Tower of Sorcerers has money input, raw resource output. Crystal Spires has armaments input, money output. Bowlery has armaments input, slavery output. Okay. And yes, I know they keep calling it the labor mechanic to try and keep it separate from the slavery mechanic for the Dark Elves. I as funny as I find it to imagine that the Chaos Dwarfs are trying to censor any depiction of their economy as being slave-based, I'm going to keep calling it the slave economy. It is. But yeah, that's awesome. That's, I was kind of wondering, is it just going to be Cathay's trade caravans, but with armaments, money, and... No, it's going to be entirely different. That's fascinating. That's cool. That's going to be also very different depending on your start. Oh, all the caravans go out of... All the convoys go out from Zarnagun, regardless of what Chaos Dwarf you're playing. That does make sense. And that's also easier on the devs, because the trade caravan system seems like it'd be a pain to work with. Yeah, this is really neat. There's a lot of different avenues to go down here. If you want to just ignore one of the resources and focus on getting it from the convoy. Interesting. If you want to play more of a turtle-heavy playstyle as the Chaos Dwarfs, you don't need to be so aggressive to get labor. Trade money or armaments for labor. That's cool.
and instantaneously build ourselves a brand new industrial powerhouse. And I know just the place to manifest it. Gorda's Backstabber, a legendary hero and a hobgoblin of renown who's more than proven himself useful to our cause, has been sent on a little excursion to the Plane of Bones. Another 4-stack province I think we can make some real use out of. We need all the raw materials and armaments we can get as we gear up to take on the Karazakarak expedition. Their army will be a great sacrifice to Hashut, as well as a clear and open message to the rest of the Tower of Zar that Drazhoath is back and means business. What better way to...
Okay, so Drazhoath the Ashen and Gordo's Backstabber are both pronounced as I expected, but I am not going to let go how the guy voicing over this video had a little bit of trouble there. Hang on, let's go back just a little bit. He had some issues with Gordo's there. I don't want to mock him too.
Ourselves a brand new industrial powerhouse, and I know just the place to manifest it. Gorda's Backstabber.
Yeah, that was a little bit awkward of a read there. Gordas. Don't blame the guy, though. Doing this stuff is probably pretty hard. They probably have to do a lot of takes.
Is back and means business. What better way to send a message to the other?
With that said, there's a good chance that I'm going to just amuse myself quite a bit by calling Gordas every now and then, so hey, that may become a thing for me.
The Chaos Dwarfs, then completely crushing our non-chaotic counterpart. To get that, we're going to need armaments to up our capacity and capabilities in the Hellforge.
Here we go.
Welcome to the Hellforge.
Okay, so it looks like it is the Beastman Dread mechanic. You can trade armaments to raise the caps on any of the units. There's also some kind of upgrade bar here on the side. Okay, this is interesting. Okay, I was actually thinking that the unit caps were going to be Tomb King style, which I accepted because I want the Chaos Dwarfs to have unit caps. I think unit caps are a good system that discourage doom stacking. I hate doom stacking. The mod I prefer for implementing game-wide unit caps is Drunk Flamingo's Tabletop Caps. Fantastic mod. However, this is a great way to do it. I was thinking the Tomb King unit cap model wouldn't work for the Chaos Dwarfs, because the Chaos Dwarfs should be more tall and less wide. Tomb Kings, the unit cap style they have, encourages you to build more wide and less tall. Take a lot of settlements and get a lot of military buildings up. This makes more sense for the Chaos Dwarf. The Chaos Dwarfs seem like they can actually have a solid choice between building a widespread empire versus just building a solid economy and sending out convoys to keep it supplied, build up a supply of armaments, build up your caps for your Chaos Dwarf units, and every now and then just raid outward and sack, which is what the Chaos Dwarfs should play like. In the lore, that is what they act like, though I appreciate, of course, also the choice to just build a widespread. Spend armaments to forge additional standard issue weapon and armor for units in each category, increasing their unit capacities. Number displayed beneath unit cards indicates current unit capacity. Increasing total unit capacity in a category gradually unlocks more powerful forge craft options in the manufactory, specified by the tooltips on each category's progress bar. Okay, so the more you dump into boosting the caps for each of these units, the more options you're going to unlock for the ability to construct, I'm going to assume, legendary items or unit upgrades. I do find it interesting, the separation of some of these units. Because upgrading the unit cap for Bull Centaur renders doesn't just get you 1 unit of Bull Centaur renders, it gets you 3 units of Bull Centaur renders, because you get the standard, the great weapons, and the weapons. Similarly, upgrading it for the war machines gets you 5 units. But for the Fireborn, the Kadai, you have to upgrade the individual cap. Similarly for their weird flying cows, their aggressive flying cows, or their missile unit. That's interesting. That could have some serious effects on the gameplay. You can also pretty clearly see the delineation of price here, because they already have upgraded the warrior cap to what looks like probably a warrior cap of 6, but the upgrade to that, it only costs 120 armaments. Whereas comparatively, they haven't bought even the first unit cap upgrade for Bull Centaurs, but that costs a much larger 270. Which is how it should be. Of course, the worse unit should be cheaper to get more of, but that's interesting to see such a strong delineation. Also, the Hell Cannon is just so strong that you just upgrade its unit cap by itself. That's just how strong it is.
Your one-stop shop for all things terrifying and most likely Geneva Convention breaking.
Hang on, let's go backwards a little bit. I do want for there to be differing armament caps. Differing armament costs here depending on what Legendary Lord you picked. Drazhoath should have cheaper Infernal Guard. That's his whole thing. He's out there in the Legion of Asgore. He controls Legion of Asgore, and the Infernal Guard are supposed to answer to him. While, let's say, Zoltan should probably get cheaper cap on the default warriors. Astrogoth, I don't know what he would get a cheaper cap on.
For all things terrifying and most likely Geneva Convention breaking. Luckily though, Geneva's not here. As you can see, we've upgraded capacity for certain units, namely Chaos Dwarf Warriors and their Blunderbuss Brethren. We'll want to bolster this number out a bit more as we progress, as well as bring in some Infernal units and War Machines. It's not all about numbers though. As we increase how many units we can recruit, we can also unlock additional upgrades for our units.
Oh. Hello. Okay, so it looks like we got 6 upgrade trees for melee infantry, missile infantry, flying monsters, Kadai, artillery, and bull centaurs. And it looks like... This is curious. Okay, so these are, you spend armaments on upgrades to all instances of the unit, similar to the Skaven, the Clan Scryer workshop. But what's really curious here is, first of all, why is there a scroll bar at the bottom? Second of all, total upkeep, armament upkeep per... This is what I was curious about. Because I was kind of figuring the Chaos Dwarfs would get an equivalent of the Clan Scryer workshop. But the Clan Scryer Workshop, if you've never played Ikit Claw, the Clan Scryer Workshop gets pretty insane in the upper tiers. And the upgrades get pretty ridiculous considering the fact that the Clan Scryer units are already pretty well the strongest units in the Skaven roster. And when you compare that to, say, Clan Molder, Thrott's mechanic, where he can make similar upgrades to individual units rather than all units, Thrott has to pay a cost for the insane upgrades he can get. He has to deal with the fact that his units start to get self-destructive. And a lot of the big upgrades, I want to say for Thrott, also come with drawbacks. Like, for instance, you know, an upgrade that gives Frenzy and immune to Psychology, but also gives Rampage, right? That's a pretty big drawback. If with the Chaos Dwarfs, the way it works is there's a system of upgrades that you can turn on and off that cost armament upkeep per turn. That would be really cool. Okay, and looking at it, it looks like these would be upgrades for all melee infantry. Spell Resist 25 on Chaos Dwarfs, that would be... I would be hesitant to buy that unless I'm specifically going against Zenith or Vampire counts, because the AI is pretty bad at using magic. But going against Zenith or Vampire counts, you're pretty guaranteed to see some magic use. So, Skaven would be another one that'd be good to get Spell Resist on. Skaven or Nightmares with their magic. Frenzy on all units is strong. Frenzy on all units is really strong. That's a considerable boost to melee attack and weapon strength, as well as immune to psychology. Immune to psychology is not the kind of thing that you immediately see and think that's just crazy strong, but it actually is really strong. If you're going against units that have terror, immune to psychology is inherently a plus 21 leadership. Because terror, for those who don't know, fear reduces enemy leadership inherently by -8. Unless they have immune to psychology or fear or terror themselves. Terror, I believe, makes enemy units automatically rout when they hit 13 leadership, which in effect means it's -13 leadership, but also has the additional effect of instant routing. So, when you think about terror, that means it's effectively a minus 21 leadership, which is really nice. Immune to psychology means you get to ignore that. And so immune to psychology winds up being an actually very underrated ability. And you get these goofs who say that, you know, all dwarf warriors should get immune to psychology because the lore says that they are fearless. No. Charge reflect, that is also really strong. Yeah. Just sit your dwarf warriors right there. Don't bother charging them in. Just let the opponent kill themselves. Thundering attacks is absurdly strong. Immune to contact effects is very, very strong. Poison is a killer. Being able to ignore poison is great. Causes fear, that's great too. 10% physical resist, that's great. Glittering scales, I don't remember what that does. That's a legendary item effect, so I don't remember what that does. These are all crazy strong. These absolutely need to have an armament upkeep, because, oh boy, just looking at this, you can set up the most absurd Chaos Dwarf front line that will just, anything the opponent can throw at you will just bounce off them. So I'm going to assume Chaos Dwarf Warriors are comparable to standard Dwarf Warriors. Infernal Guard, I'm going to assume, are kind of going to be Longbeard level, maybe a slight difference in stats. Infernal Ironsworn, I'm not sure where they're going to sit. Oh, also, there's the Immortal thing, right? When they showed the Chaos Dwarf unit cards, there was an extra unit that nobody really recognized of guys wearing skull masks and dual-wielding axes. And the name everybody was giving them was the Immortals. And I believe that name is actually the name that turns out they have, but they are a regiment of renown. Which is a little bit odd. Creative Assembly ordinarily doesn't put in that much effort to make unique regiments of renown, but it is cool assets for modders to have. So that's a little bit odd, but I'm not going to complain about unique regiments of renown. I think that the regiments of renown mechanic for me is really boring because they aren't very unique looking visually. I know that they have very neat gameplay, but yeah, there needs to be a decent armament upkeep. Okay, 8. Okay, that's what that is. Okay, I looked at the 8 armaments here, and my immediate assumption was that was the just initial cost you paid. Okay, so it's an upkeep of 8 armaments per turn for every 3 Chaos Dwarf units you have. Okay, I was also wondering, this gives you a good reason to recruit Chaos Dwarf units over Goblin Slaves or Hobgoblins. I was worried about that when I saw that the Greenskin units don't have upkeep, or don't have unit caps, but the Chaos Dwarf units do. Because I was kind of thinking, well then, realistically speaking, what motivation do you have then to just not recruit Chaos Dwarf units at all? Like, except for artillery and monsters. Just skip Chaos Dwarf infantry altogether, recruit Hobgoblins everywhere, and just focus on the technologies and the Lord's skills that buff Hobgoblins. This is the reason why you're going to want to shell out for Chaos Dwarf Warriors. This upkeep, okay, 8 armament upkeep for every 3 Chaos Dwarf infantry units. That's interesting. That's going to focus really strongly on how much you can keep up your industry to really support the war machine. But that is Sundering in particular, my god. That is going to mean that effectively your Chaos Dwarf Warriors that just have standard axe and shields are going to be pretty close to being armor pierced. That's crazy.
These can be quite costly, and they'll add on to our armament's expenditure per unit per turn, but it'll increase their effectiveness in the field. Okay, that's a lot of talking and a lot of war planning. We need the space for these grand machinations, and we're starting to outgrow Noblar country. We've got a lot of laborers here.
I'm gonna be honest, I want them to go backwards and implement more of that kind of thing in a lot of the mechanics for a lot of the DLC. Ikit Claw is a big one. He's absurd to deal with. If you've ever played the Southern Realms mod, you know he's a pain unless you can get a really nice early ambush on him. But I'd like to see a bit more of that going around for a lot of Legendary Lords. Also, Orion could probably stand to see that upkeep bonus from War used quite a bit. Right now, it's a bit Orion could play that way.
And they need new assignments. The Iron Fist of the Legion and the Fiery Anger of Drazhoath and Cinderbreath are pointed firmly at you, Imric.
I should go ahead and say, I know it's a fun power fantasy. I understand that. But it becomes a pain to fight the guys who are so absurdly overpowered. And on top of that, there can be interesting and fun ways of adding limitations. For the Chaos Dwarfs, making it a armament upkeep instead of a money upkeep. If it was a money upkeep for the upgrades on your Chaos Dwarf units, I think that was really boring and would just feel very punishing. Whereas the armament upkeep is a very different kind of... It makes you make choices. You want to invest your armaments in selling them. You want to invest your armaments in building more military buildings. You want to invest your armaments in making your military units more effective. That's a really interesting choice. And it feels less punishing. Have that upkeep be there and something you can just turn on and turn off. That is a really interesting mechanic. I think that is a very creative idea that I would love to see Creative Assembly go back and kind of add more interesting drawbacks to a lot of the crazy upgrades you can get on a lot of the DLC stuff. If not Creative Assembly, I'd love to see modders take a shot at it. Let's proceed. I mean, just for instance, the Lustrium Rises mod came out not too recent. Oh, it was pretty recent. Either which way, it went through and overhauled all the Lizardmen Legendary Lords, and they did hit a little bit of a nerf on Tehenowen's really insane banners, and he kind of needed it. In exchange for also adding some units and some other mechanics to make Tehenowen less reliant on those banners to have a fun campaign.
Pigbarter's garrison is seriously lacking, almost as if Imric did the classic High Elf thing of looking down his nose at us for too long.
It's a common misstep. Nothing that a happy hobgoblin and an infernal engine can't fix.
That's funny.
Chaos Dwarf warriors aren't the quickest, but Gordaz and his hobgoblins are perfectly capable of holding their ground until they arrive. Once they're in, the Knights of Caledor will get acquainted with the tidal wave of iron and hatred that is the Dawizar.
The Skullcracker looks hilarious and makes hilarious train noises. I'm going to be building a lot of those.
Well, we've certainly forced Imric's hand now. This, however, isn't our only front. For starters, we do have some issues to deal with in Noblar country. As we're going on the offensive, we're going to be gaining more labor, which can actually have its issues. Control back in our home province is dropping quite heavily due to the labor populace. I imagine they're all talking, you know? Talking about such frivolous prospects like bathroom breaks and lunch hours. I bet they're even considering the concept of paid overtime. We can settle their little ideologies by utilizing labor to rush production.
Implying the Chaos Dwarfs pay them at all, which is not the case. Boy, are they trying to push the unpaid intern angle here? Also, what's up with that port? That's a level 2 port. And it's got a beer jug on it. What is the story there? Also, they didn't bother building the lumber resource at all. There are some times, though, where you know you're not going to bother building up much of a trade empire, so you just...
But I'm going to keep matters in line for a few turns by setting an example. A missing guardrail here, a wrong type of ladder handed off there. This should hopefully keep matters in line. Our other front is the caravan. If we're unlucky, there might be many hardships on the road that we'll encounter. Chaos Dwarf hardware, after all, is nothing to scoff at. And to say that we're proficient in making enemies is, is quite the understatement. If they fail, it's going to make creating a new industrial zone a lot more difficult. But moving on Pigbarter has opened our eyes to a potential contingency. Darkhold is part of this province, and it happens to just be a ruin. I don't buy that for a second though. Where there's ruins, there's rats. And where there's rats, there's a possibility that big, man-sized rats that don't know what am I doing. We're not the Empire, we're the Dawizar. It's Skaven. There's Skaven in them there hills. And if I have to diversify my upcoming workforce, you bet I will. Oh, look who it is. Stinking rats. We'll be hitting the rats
Assembly
with the
knows
same
that the
tactic we
hidden
had in
ruins mechanic is a
Pigbarter.
joke.
We'll pepper them with artillery as well as magic from Drazhoath. utilizing Cinderbreath's flying speed. At that point, it's all iron, gunpowder, coal, and hate. Choo-choo! Oh, come on, you know I needed to make at least one of those. Okay, so my anger might have gotten the better of me, and by doing this, we may have made things a bit more difficult for us here.
I don't think I've not
honoring
been
the
actually
Skaven,
pausing to
which
look at
leaves
unit
us with
stats on our
dilemma.
unit cards,
On one
but
hand, we're already
we'll see
taking
those
land from the
soon.
Knights of
If
Caliber,
I catch
and
one,
it'd
I'll
be
see one.
proficient for
I'll
us to
stop
keep
for
our
it.
labor in this
But I'm not
region
going backwards.
alone. However, on the other hand, Clan Rictus might be a little sneaky, and could potentially try to sneak up on Noblar County, while our primary legion is destroying Imric's boys. We need to recoup our losses and muster some new units. So for the meantime, we'll hang in Darkhold and see what happens. So we've hit our first dilemma with
A cacophony of roars and feral shrieks rings out ahead of your convoy. A Dark Elf Beastmaster approaches. By the look of his shackled beasts, he has recently returned from an expedition into Norska and poses little threat, his retinue of hunters visibly weary and battered from their run-ins with the Northmen and critters of the tundra. With a tired, drooky sneer, he offers the convoy one of his creatures in exchange for some supplies. Though we care little for the Dark Elf's plight, such a beast could be useful against future. So is this implying the Chaos Dwarfs and Dark Elves are more or less chill? Not a surprise.
convoy here. If we spend cargo, we'll get less labor coming in. But on the other hand, I'm not really up for saying no to a dragon. Speaking of dragons, the dragon nerd...
A dragon for convoy is really strong. I guess that's going to be the Chaos Dwarf equivalent of the Cathay event where you get 2 free Celestial Dragon Crossbowmen or Celestial Dragon Guard, as well as a massive boost to your income from that given convoy.
Imric himself has left the Fortress of Vorag. I guess I'm not the only one with a potential Skaven issue, but it'd be foolish not to pounce on the opportunity. So, let's move on in and make ourselves welcome, shall we? Time is of the essence, so we've no time for siege weapons. We're utilizing ladders, the Skullcracker for the gate, and Drazhoath brutalizing the gate garrison. Once we're in, let's let the Skullcracker let loose. With our guns on the wall, we run the penitentiary now.
Cordoz is
Knights
really
of
stealing the
Caliber
show for
overcome
some.
in their fortress by iron and
He looks
magic.
pretty great.
It was only a matter of time before they crumbled before the Legion of Asgore. The Fortress of Vorag is ours, and a tower is raised in Hashut's glory.
Hang on, let's go backwards a little. Spend Conclave influence. Interesting, to upgrade the towers. I was figuring you would spend labor. Okay,
Fortress of Vorag is ours, and a tower is raised in Hashut's glory. And we earned ourselves a new gift in the process. The Kadai Fireborn. Demonic fire elementals bound by Chaos Dwarf sorcery and adorned in Darwi's
got a crown. I like the runes all over.
armaments. Their ferocity makes them exceptional flank troops, and precisely what I want in my
Oh, that's not a crown, that's a brazier, because they're living fire. That makes more sense.
army. We do, however, have more trouble on our hands. First off, we have this hero unit hanging around outside, and she's ruining the vibe, to be honest. Gordas, deal with her. Gordas, way to go, mate. Truly living up to that surname.
What poor guy had to make those tiny little dice models that nobody's going to see?
Our convoy is under attack, and a strategic question
Wandering convoy of our weak-willed former kin has stumbled into our lands. Their very presence here is an offense to the Father of Darkness, one that should be wiped away with blood. Now, do we slaughter them all or massacre them? Annihilation, perhaps? choices. Okay, I guess dwarfs also have convoys that just aren't a gameplay mechanic for them.
For the ages has been posed to us. Do I slaughter? Or do I massacre? Never before has a question been asked to a general that is so intense. I'll think on it as I crush these Darwi into dust. And I'll let the result determine which we did.
Well, that's the equivalent of the Karazhan dwarfs dilemma they get, where it's one choice is avenge the grudge and the other is honors all. Something like that. Where there is no choice.
Drazhoath marches on Imric at Anarel's tomb.
The Skullcracker's funny to see every time. It's a very angry Oh my god, they have reload animation.
I think I'll deem this one a slaughter. I love dragons. Maybe Imric had the right idea. So all that's left in our grand plan is taking Anarel's tomb.
I'm curious when they'll explain what the
did with
gameplay difference will be
Imric.
between standard Chaos Dwarf artillery and train units versus the Hellbound variants. Also, get a load of this army by Imric here. Not only did he go all archers, he sprung for the light armor variant. I don't know why. They're a waste of money, Imric.
But I think we can do better. No hard feelings, mate. It's just business. Imric has brought the numbers, and while we're not lacking ourselves, we're going to have to use our units to our advantage. Our firing lines have the capacity to drop whatever he throws at us at the speed of however quickly they can reload. He's also trying to send some archers around the side, but we can counteract that with the speed of the Fireborn.
I'm curious to try out the blunderbusses. I've always had a bit of issues with a lot of the shotgun units
The Kadai aren't the
in Total War Warhammer, and I'm curious to see if I can learn how to better use them through Chaos War.
only people bringing the fire, though. Give him a taste, Cinderbreath. Our Skullcracker is already getting started.
I wonder if all Great Tauruses can use a fire breath magic missile. That'd be interesting.
Started by tending to the fields. A bit preemptive, we've only one now, but hey, we need a nice place for Cinderbreath to relax in. Look at him frolic. So, with Imric off the board and these lands firmly under our control, we can get to further bolstering our...
I like that you do get a little UI thing in the top left there that tells you what you've already got in this province. Just so you know, I need another outpost, I need another factory, so on. That's a nice little convenience feature.
Off the board and these lands firmly under our control, we can get to further bolstering our infernal machine and prepare to take on those pesky Darwi. This is a definite victory for the infernal machine. And
oh, you get a notification every time one of the other factions takes a seat in the Tower of Zar. Interesting.
prepare to take on those pesky Darwi. This is a definite victory for us, despite our losses. We'll need to...
That's a metal depiction of Hashid. Oh boy, we get to see some of the factory buildings. Yeah, trade armaments, trade raw materials for armaments, and chaos corruption. This guy looks like he's making quite a bit of raw materials, so I'm not going to be sorrowful for that.
regroup for a bit, gather our strength, and bolster up our army. Once we're at full strength, we march on the expedition, and we're gonna bring a new friend with us. Wait, hold on, what's that? Oh, so that's where you went, Tretch. What fitting behavior for a rat. We've established a bit of a foothold here, and I want my province back under my full control. Tretchy has made this personal, so I'm going to expend some of my labor to build a Dreadquake mortar, primarily to hurt him.
What is that? A prototype mega mortar. A really big cannon works wonders for making those considering sacking your tower think twice before launching their attack. Campaign movement range minus 15% for enemy armies starting their turn in this region. Army ability, Dreadquake Battery. All armies in local and adjacent regions. Plus 1 number of uses for Dreadquake Battery. Whoa, that's interesting. That's pretty cool. Interesting.
While I'm also preparing, as it will take us a few turns to reach Darkhold, I've also got some Conclave influence, and Floor 2 has opened up.
Let's see, what have we got here? Well, we can already see from Tier 1 that he's picked up abilities. Armor of Content, don't know what that means. Plus Diplo relations with other Chaos factions. Plus 50% income from trade tariffs. Oh my god. I know a lot of people underrate trade. Trade tariffs are actually pretty strong once you get a lot of buffs on them and once you have just a lot of trade agreements. When you've only got 1 or 2 or 3 trade agreements, trade tariff buffs are not that crazy. But if you've ever played, let's say, the Southern Realms mod, or now the Marienburg mod out, then you will see just how crazy the trade tariff buffs can get.
And the Tower of Tsar. I still
-1 construction time for all buildings. Active comp. Right, I saw that earlier. Ooh.
need a bit more influence for some of the
Enclave influence gained, +1 per turn for factory settlement buildings. By the way, I wonder if they're going to later on release a DLC Legendary Lord for Cathay that can launch more than 1 caravan at a time. This seems like the one you'd want to go for first at a Tier 2. The seat that gets you more seats. That seems good. Hello, kitty. I got a cat that wants to go.
unlocks here, and wait, hold on. Someone's taken one of my seats. Zatan! Oh, come on, man. I thought we were pals in like a Cold War and not really pals kind of way. You're lucky you're the focus of the next episode, or I swear on her shit. Anyways, anger aside, we need to strategize. I'm going to add modifications in the Hellforge for our units to spice them up, as we're still lacking a bit in numbers, and we need every
Okay, the scroll wheel is for the next pillar over, which is the missile unit. Okay, so you can either use the buttons or the scroll wheels to look at the other units. Okay. And I'm going to assume that it looks like you start with access to the missile infantry and missile infantry, melee infantry, war machine, pillars to begin with, and then you need to use the technology tree, I assume, to unlock the ones for the flying monsters, the Kadai, and the bullseye stars. It does seem like they're hiding the research pillars for the other units, though, because that could be potentially really, really crazy.
Advantage we can get. We're also bringing in 2 regiments of renown. The Blazing Beards, Chaos Dwarf Warriors with beards that fill me, personally, with fear, and Hashut's favorite engine, the Demon's Tongue. You brought this on yourself, Tretch. I'm gonna scorch your
I like the goofy transitions of the Skaven slave getting chased by Drazhoath and stuff like that. It's just...
and break whatever affrontive vehicle technology this thing is. Ugh, so primitive. I'm cursing that doom wheel with the curse of Hashut, just as Tretch's reinforcements arrive. Right, so what does this button do? That's a really fun button. Well, we've successfully discarded any bravery those reinforcements of Tretch has had.
Look at these guys. Look at the pilots of this train. They just look so bored.
We've successfully discarded any bravery those reinforcements of Tretch has had, which leaves us with a nice little massacre to have here. I'd say thank you for the warm-up, but I think we're hot enough. Oh, so this one's a massacre. Ah, there we go.
Retreat! Surrender!
Whew. Well, that was commendable, if dishonorable, Tretch. Have fun in the mines, rat. So, with Tretch's forces blown to Kingdom Come, we've eked out a victory here, but the expedition is still on the horizon. I need to take more time to recuperate and rebuild my forces. But I've got some spicy projects going on at the Black Fortress. It's going to be an interesting time for the Karazakarak expedition. by the time I get around to them. So, here we are. We've rebuilt up our forces, bolstering here and there. We've got some nasty new tricks up our sleeve with a new tower seat, and we're throwing everything we can at this. We need them dead if we're going to show the Tower of Tsar how badly Astragoth messed up for exiling us all our years ago. We also managed to summon a new friend into the fray for the battle too. Karazakarak Expedition, say hello to the Kadai Destroyer.
Okay, we get to see this thing finally.
Luckily, we've got a meat shield line of laborers here too, which is convenient considering we took our time looking cool arriving in slow-mo. No apologies, they understand. Let's sacrifice some Darwi, shall we? For her shirt.
Clipping is a hell of a thing. I'm glad Archaon doesn't clip into his own neck brace.
We'll send the Kadai Destroyer in first to deal with their frontline units, to replace the grudges in their hearts with fear. Oh, some lads are trying to pull a sneaky flank. I don't think the gyrocopters were ready for Cinder Breath though. While the Kadai are out here,
So the
having
Kadai
the
Destroyer
best
has some
time
kind
one
of
can
pile
have
buffer
while
on its
thanks
gauntlet,
to
doesn't it?
Darwi's our technology, we'll use our new tower seat to spawn in even more Fireborn to flank these would-be flankers. How unfortunate.
Power seat. So strong.
Admittedly, the only people
Especially
here
once you
I
get rid
feel
of the
sorry
other
for,
Chaos Dwarf
though,
fact.
are the laborers. The Destroyer is quite excitable, but it's okay, we'll get more.
I've just noticed that some of the Orc laborers have Chaos Dwarf runes inscribed on them.
Laborers, right?
Yeah, it looks like it's probably gonna just be cinematics from here on out. It is... The Chaos Dwarfs are looking like... I'm still spooked by the Power of Tsar mechanic. That looks like that has serious potential to make the Chaos Dwarfs broken. Similarly, such a big tech tree, if they can get a good research rate going, that big tech tree could be seriously really strong once you get deep into it. I'm glad to see that the Hellforged... Now the cat wants out. And I'm glad to see that the Hellforged stuff, though, has some drawbacks to it. Though it comes with some pretty nuts buffs. And let me just go back to it. Back to what it was. Because if you can get to the end game and have just more armaments than God. Oh, why are we taking so long to load? There we go. Go back just a second.
Upgrades for our units.
What's with the resolution? What's up here? Fix that, please.
These can be quite costly. It'll unlock additional
Hang on, I want to
upgrades
see
for
the
our
complete...
units.
There we go. So, obviously stacking all these up would be a large amount of armament upkeep. That would probably inhibit your ability to not just sell them through the convoy, but to upgrade your unit cap. But, especially if you're going into a really big, bad battle, and you have a lot of infantry, shelling out for all of these just for one battle and then turning them off could be really strong. And let's just see here, because it's 8 upkeep for the still pretty strong buffs, and then 12 for the absurdly strong sundering. How many armament per turn is he making in the... See. I get a good look at his... Okay, he's making 200 armaments per turn. Depending on how many Chaos Dwarf Warriors you've already got out, that could be pretty affordable. Yeah, that's interesting. The Chaos Dwarf economics sound really interesting on a lot of levels. But we will have to see just how crazy some of these buffs get. Because this right here, these look like pretty big costs. Which, I mean, if you play the Beastman campaign in the early game, raising the unit caps on anything that isn't just Ungor archers is a pain. So, it'll probably be similar in the early game for the Chaos Dwarf. But once you can get a good unit cap supply going, getting this crazy Hellforge buff game going, if you can afford the armaments, means you can pretty well, with one army, probably take on much, much larger forces. Which usually I think is Crave Assembly's preferred way of developing the game. They usually prefer to encourage the player to build build just one or two really strong armies and take on the whole world. So I'm not super shocked by that. But this is really kind of crazy. I'm curious what it'll look like for the other units. Because these are really, really strong. I'm curious what they can do with artillery. The artillery and war machine selection to make them strong. I have to assume there will be some melee buffs in the war machine selection just for the Skullcracker and the Iron Demon. But, well, I guess that calls into question just how strong of melee capabilities all of the Chaos Dwarf artillery units will have. Because we know the Hell Cannon isn't that strong in melee. Not terrible in melee as artillery units go, but it's not that strong. Definitely not compared to the tabletop, where it had some pretty wacky stuff, to my understanding. The buffs you can get on all this, I do find it funny. There's these large trees of buffs you can get here. But then there's also going to be separate trees for the Kadai, the flying monsters, and the bull centaurs, who you will presumably not have so many of, though that will probably make the upgrades more affordable. And so you will get these, for spending this upkeep, you will get buffs to wide swaths of the Chaos Dwarf unit tree here. For these 5 units. Whereas for the missile infantry killer, that's just going to be 2 units getting buffed by that. Though, admittedly, probably going to be a lot of. Yeah, this all looks crazy. The Chaos Dwarfs look like they're going to be a lot of fun to play. Very interesting gameplay cycle. Maybe not so much fun to play against, we'll see, especially once you get to the mid and late game. Because if you ever play against, let's say, Skaven, then you know that playing against Skaven in the early game is very different from playing against Skaven in the late game. So, yeah, this is all going to be very interesting to see in action. I definitely like this direction, though, of at least having the idea of some kind of drawback to the crazy buff. Because even with the Tower of Zar, I've said the Tower of Zar looks like it'll be insane once you get rid of the other Chaos Dwarf factions. But while the other Chaos Dwarf factions are still on the field, they will probably be a pain. They will probably routinely present issues of stealing the best seats from you. Or, well, knowing AI and Total War, they'll probably just steal random seats from you, in which case, hopefully, they'll steal the less great seats. But still, there is at least that drawback. I really hope they do go back and make some of the DLC mechanics that are a bit just... I'm not a fan of mechanics that are just win more. If a mechanic can reward you for winning with a very different twist on the gameplay formula that is more rewarding for skillful play, I think that's a different game. I think that's cool. And that does look like a lot of what they're shooting for here with the Chaos Dwarf. So I like to see a lot of that. That looks pretty cool. Yeah, the Chaos Dwarfs I was going to be really into just because they have such unique aesthetic and so many cool units. But these campaign mechanics are very satisfactory to me. The convoy stuff in particular looks fascinating. Just the different kinds of resources you get and trading them back and forth. Where that is here in the menu. Doesn't really matter, you saw it anyways. I'm interested to see with the Chaos Dwarfs just how viable all the different avenues are. Compared to, let's say, if there's just one avenue you can really invest in with the Chaos Dwarfs that's just really strong. So, which, I mean, inevitably, there's always going to be one playstyle that's better than the others. There's no way to have everything be totally balanced while still having such wildly different playstyles. That's just the nature of designing that way. But I'm really curious to see these guys in action. I want to get my hands on them, not in a weird pervy way. I believe that's about the extent of what I can say for this particular video here. This is a lot meatier than I was expecting, honestly. Even though there were large stretches of just cinematic battles where I didn't have anything to say. I'm curious, though, how they can make J'atan the Black's video very interesting, other than exploring the other pillars. And probably exploring the deeper sides of the tech tree as well. But the Chaos Dwarfs, there's going to be a lot of dissecting these guys when first YouTubers get their hands on them, of course, and then when players get their hands on them. Because compared to some of the races in Total War Warhammer that are a bit simpler, like the Empire, you get such a basic tech tree, and your racial mechanic is the elector count mechanic, which is, I think, solid in terms of trying to play the political game and keep the resources balanced, but there's not really interesting, like, push and pull with it so much. And the reward for it usually is just gaining a little bit more real estate. Because the state troop system, I'm not a very big fan of. Compare that to what the Chaos Dwarfs get here. And there's so many possibilities to explore. And there just looks like there's so much replayability. I mean, Astrogoth will probably be the first one I go for. I love Astrogoth's wacky design, though Drazhoath is definitely tempting. But this seems like a race where I'd be very happy to go through and play once more with each of the Legendary Lords pretty quickly after launch. And Crave Assembly, I think Crave Assembly's been doing a better job with that lately, making more interesting gameplay design. I think that when they were early on experimenting with the first of what I would consider almost like the new generation of racial designs, with the Empire and the Greenskins, there was some neat progression, but there was also some big fumbles. I think if there's any race that needs nerfing right now, it's the Greenskins. The Wog mechanic is a nightmare to deal with. If you have played Greasus, his campaign, or Olek, or really anyone who starts next to Grimgor, you know that Grimgor is a nightmare. He's always been a nightmare, admittedly, but he's a nightmare right now with the Wog mechanics being as strong as they are. And if you've played as the Greenskins, you know that the Wog mechanic tends to make just about every threat to you a joke, as long as the Wog is in full roll, So I'd love to see maybe a second look at both the Empire and the Greenskins. Because compared to the Wood Elves, the Beastmen, and I'd say the Beastmen are in nerfs as well, they're a bit too now. But the Wood Elves, the Beastmen, the Champions of Chaos update for the Warriors of Chaos, the Chaos Dwarfs as we have them now, to a certain degree, the Ogre Kingdoms. I know there are a lot of people who don't like the Ogre Kingdoms campaign right now, but I like the Ogre campaign a lot. Cathay has a lot of interesting possibilities in their tech tree and the decisions of how to balance yin and yang, what units to go for. I think they're all really strong. I think most of the demon races are on the cusp of having a really solid setup. I think Scarbrand right now is in a very good place. I haven't put in too much time with the other demon races, but they've all got very solid possibilities from what I've seen. I think the Chaos Dwarfs look like they're going to be in a very good place. I'm curious to see where else we're going to go from here. Oh, I also saw, the free LC for this update is going to be Ulrika Magdova Stragov. There we go. Who is going to be a heroic vampire, a legendary hero for the Empire and Kislev. He looks cool. I like the design. The Legendary Characters mod already released their take on Ulrika quite a while ago, and they went for the design from the front cover of one of the novels, which is also a strong design. But Crave Assembly went for what looked like more of a tabletop design, I believe, and it is also a winner. I like both designs. I'm glad the Legendary Characters team has decided they're going to go ahead and keep their version of it, especially because she's exclusive to the Vampire account. So, that looks like it's going to be a cool free LC. I'm interested in the idea of more free LC heroes, in large part because the map in Immortal Empires is congested and claustrophobic already. And it's a huge map, but there's just so many Legendary Lords. Any given Legendary Lord you can pick in the game right now, with the exception of Zhao Ming, you are going to be starting off already with, 4 or 5 other legendary lords in your immediate vicinity, all of whom want your head. The legendary heroes, I think, as a free LC and DLC model, is an interesting way to still add cool, unique characters while not running into that issue of having a legendary lord in every single province or even every single settlement. Yeah, I guess that's about the extent of what I wanted to say about that. So, either which way, I will see you folks later. Hope you enjoyed the video. All that jazz.